the rest of the world looks on at Biden and thinks someone else has got to be running the government?
Well, somebody else has to be. I don't think he's capable of doing anything. Look, when I debated him, I said, how come, and this was in front of, probably not a friend of yours, Chris Wallace, who was the moderator.
Not a friend.
I said, why is it he wants to be Mike, but he doesn't have the talent? It's one of those...
Bitchy little man.
He wanted to be his father, but he didn't have the talent of his father was great. His father...
Fussy man.
His father interviewed me on 60 Minutes. It was actually a 10. Can you believe it?
I told you. His father had talent.
I may have been the only guy that he gave a good 60 Minutes to. He was rough.
Really?
His father was tough. He was great, though. He was great at what he did. But Chris Wallace was so upset. He was guarding this guy, who wouldn't do a show, by the way. You know, he wouldn't do... I figured... I didn't mind Chris Wallace because Biden wouldn't do a show. And it was very obvious. You know, he kept asking him and asking, but he wouldn't do the show, so I figured he's got to like me. But he came from a different planet. But remember when I asked the question, why is it that the mayor of Moscow's wife is allowed to give you $3.5 million? Don't forget, that was brought up now, it's brought up all the time, but that was brought up by me long before anyone ever heard of it. I said, the mayor of Moscow's wife giving you $3.5 million. What did you do to deserve $3.5 million? And Chris Wallace said, this has nothing to do with the debate. I mean, he
got in the way of the question.
Well, it was crazy. And I said, well, wait a minute, he got $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife. Now, people forget that, but if you go back and take a look, you will see. And Chris Wallace didn't want me to ask that question. I said, I think it's a very appropriate question. It turned out to be much more appropriate than people thought.
Amazing. So do you have a preference in, assuming you're the Republican nominee and all goes as you plan it to go, do you have a preference in who you run against?
In many ways, I'd love to run against him because his record's so bad. You know, it's still horrible when you look at inflation and everything else, but others also have very bad records. I mean, California's a bad record, so, you know, should it be Gavin or should it be somebody else? When I look at San Francisco, what's happened to that incredible city. That was one of the greatest cities in the world just a short while ago. And now it's very sad when you look at it. Los Angeles, every city practically, all the Democrat-run cities. You know, Republican-run cities are doing very nicely.
That was Tucker Carlson and President Trump missed the GOP. He did the interview with Tucker Carlson instead. And yes, President Biden, who really is running the country? Is it Kamala Harris? Is it Hunter Biden? Or is it Dr. Jill Biden? Tisha Paul, subscribe for more news. Just go ahead and follow us free on TikTok or subscribe for free on YouTube.
This is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth.
President Trump, I believe, was the best president of the 21st century. It's a fact. And Chris Christie, honest to God, your claim that Donald Trump is motivated by vengeance and grievance would be a lot more credible if your entire campaign were not based on vengeance and grievance against one man. And if people at home want to see a bunch of people blindly bashing Donald Trump without an iota of vision for this country, they could just change the channel to MSNBC right now.
In fact, Ramaswamy's presence and the attention and ire he seemed to draw from everybody else on that stage was easily one of the bigger stories of the night. As the most Trump-like candidate, he seemed to suck up the oxygen on stage as he tried to capture the anti-establishment and anti-government screeds and grievances that first catapulted Trump to the top of the Republican field back in 2015. Here are some of the biggest hits of the field against Ramaswamy.
Let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax. The climate change agenda is a hoax. And we have to declare independence for it. And the reality is, the anti-carbon agenda is the wet blanket on our economy. And so the reality is, more people are dying of bad climate change policies than they are of actual climate change.
Governor Haley, are you bought and paid for?
Is down by 98% in the last century.
Listen.
I've had enough.
Hold on.
I've had enough. I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
Come over and give me a hug. Give me a hug just like you did to
The
Obama.
same type of amateur.
And you'll help elect me just like you did to Obama, too. Give me that
The
bear
same
hug, brother.
type of amateur.
So if you're keeping score at home, by the way, the top 3 candidates in the polls.
It's not going to be too long before he rolls across a NATO border, and frankly, our men and women of our armed forces are going to have to go and fight him. I want to let the Ukrainians fight and drive Putin and the Russians back out into Russia.
I want to just
So our
briefly
troops
address
are going to have
Pence.
to make that
Vice
fight.
President Pence. I have a newsflash. The USSR does not exist anymore. It fell back in 1990.
Did I say
The real
USSR?
threat. You talked about the communists. And the real communists that we have to address
Do you
right now
not have
is
any
the...
idea what Vladimir Putin's aims
You
are?
already spoke. Now I actually have something to
Vladimir
say.
Putin has been saying he wants to reestablish the old Soviet sphere
You've made
of
your point,
influence.
Vice President.
Now,
Vice
if you
President
think-
Pence,
I'm sorry if I insulted him by calling him a communist. He is a dictator and a murderer, and the United States of America needs to stand against authoritarianism.
That was a segment on Fox. NBC was commentating on it, and it shows Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the top GOP contender. Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump are 2 GOP contenders, and people love them because they speak truth. And that's what voters want. They want truth. They're looking for authentic candidates. And Vivek Ramaswamy and President Donald Trump are 2 top contenders for the GOP. Tisha Paul, folks, go ahead and hit that free like and that free subscribe button on YouTube, and follow us for free on TikTok. We'll be back with more news.
Well, great news for conservatives. New York is finally cracking down on crime. Former President Donald Trump was indicted for his role in paying hush money to porn star Stormy Daniels, and the trial will be like a Stormy Daniels movie because I'm deeply ashamed at how excited I am to watch it. Trump will reportedly surrender next week, but his lawyer, Joe Tacopina, who Trump definitely calls Joe Tapioca, said that the president will not be put in handcuffs, though he would consider wearing fake breakaway handcuffs and a Superman t-shirt.
That was a skit from Saturday Night Live about Trump being indicted. They're just making fun of it, and I'm just saying we got to make fun of it. I mean, Biden was behind this. What do you think Biden did when Trump was being indicted? Let's do the Biden dance. That's what Biden did. He was like, yeah, I won. No, you didn't win, Biden. You still have to come up against the GOP debate. Nice try, Biden. Nice try. I'm Tisha Paul. Hit that free like and that free subscribe button. Time to leave with the Biden dance.